Earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods are some of the deadliest natural disasters that cause thousands of deaths every year in various countries. Some are small with minor damage, while others create damage that changes the country for centuries. Today we will be talking about 5 of the world's largest floods. But before we move on, let's talk about what floods are exactly. And how are they caused? Flooding often happens when heavy rain falls for an extended period of time over a short period, or when a river or stream overflows due to an ice or debris block. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon so you are the first ones to know about our next upload. The Great Flood of 1993, Mississippi. The Mississippi River near St. Louis peaked at 49.58 feet on August 1, 1993, making it the highest level ever measured. The size and impact of the Great Flood of 1993 were unusual and have been considered the most costly and deadly flood to destroy the U.S. in recent history. The 1993 flood was caused by unusually extreme weather and hydrologic conditions. A wet fall in 1992 that led to above-average soil moisture and reservoir levels in the Missouri and upper Mississippi River systems created the conditions for this. Following these circumstances, continuous weather patterns led to storms over the same areas. During that time, rain fell more than 4 feet in some places. Over 1,000 flood warnings and statements, 5 times the normal, were issued to notify the public and need-to-know officials of river levels. Some locations on the Mississippi River were in flood for almost 200 days, while locations on Missouri neared 100 days of flooding. It inundated 27,000 square miles, an area about the size of New England, killing as many as 1,000 people, displacing 700,000 more, and making billions of dollars in damages. The 1999 Vargas mudslide, Venezuela. From December 14 to 16, 1999, severe rains in Venezuela's Vargas state created flash floods and debris flows that killed tens of thousands of people, demolished thousands of homes, and completely wrecked the state's infrastructure. This event is known as the Vargas tragedy. Relief workers said that the Las Corrales area was covered in 3 meters (9.8 feet) of mud and that many homes were simply carried into the ocean. Cerro Grande and Carmen de Uria were 2 completely vanished towns. Up to 10% of Vargas's population died as a result of the incident. The Carabali de Fan was among the most severely impacted of the numerous communities that were impacted by the catastrophe. There, a combination of 2 elements determined how severe the calamity was. Initially, there were several high-rise structures and multi-story buildings throughout the Carabali de Fan, which was heavily urbanized. Second, it is located at the entrance to the Quebrada San Julian, St. Julian Ravine, a watershed that created enormous rocks and a large area that was flooded. An estimate of the disaster's damages ranges from US 7 cents to $3.5 billion. The death toll was estimated to be between 10,000 and 30,000. However, it is difficult to pinpoint the exact number of victims because there are no reliable statistics records from the area at the time, particularly about shanty towns and small communities that were completely destroyed. In fact, only 1,000 bodies were found, with the remainder being washed out to sea by the mud or buried in the landslides. Up to 75,000 people were forced to leave Vargas due to the destruction of more than 8,000 homes and 700 apartment structures. 1974 Bangladesh flood due to monsoon rain. The 1974 Bangladesh famine started in March and lasted until roughly December of that year. The famine, which was characterized by severe flooding along the Brahmaputra River and high mortality as a result of excessive rainfall, is regarded as one of the worst in the 20th century. Since the famine-filled year of 1974, Bangladesh had its greatest monsoon flooding in 1984. These floods destroyed jute crops, a significant source of employment and monetary revenue for the rural inhabitants, during the Annis crop harvesting and Annam crop planting seasons. Nearly 1,400,000 farm households were left without equipment or animals to cultivate their land, and it is believed that 6 million homes were destroyed. Communications and transportation networks were completely interrupted. Inland waterways were blocked, bridges were gone, and roads were damaged. Although statistics on total mortality differ, one researcher gave a plausible estimate of 28,700 deaths. 1949 Eastern Guatemalan floods, Guatemala. A series of violent and deadly floods that occurred in Central America, mostly Guatemala, on October 14 and 16, 1949, killed between 1,000 and 40,000 people, ranking the floods among the deadliest in recorded history. The estimated financial damages were between $15 million to $40 million. Communication across the nation was disrupted by landslides and road blockages, which also had an impact on how food and other resources were distributed. Foreign countries offered aid to Guatemala's recovery as soon as news of the disaster made international headlines. The neighboring nations of the United States and Cuba hurried to fly emergency aid to the tragedy victims. There are several different estimates of how many individuals were impacted by the event. The government estimated that at most 20,000 people were affected at the time of the floods, although news organizations stated that approximately 100,000 people were left homeless. At the time of the incident, the government estimated that there had been about 1,000 fatalities. However, more recent data indicate that there may have been almost 40,000 deaths due to the flooding. In addition to the flood's direct fatal effects, Guatemala's way of life was greatly affected in a variety of other ways. According to estimates, the floods had financial costs between $15 million and $40 million. In addition, Guatemala also suffered agricultural losses to the country's two main export crops, coffee and bananas, which saw losses of 10% and 20%. Along with major losses in the livestock industry, many other crop losses, including a few to corn, beans, and rice, were also recorded. Foreign nations offered aid to Guatemala's reconstruction as soon as news of the disaster made international headlines. 1931 to 1975 China floods, China. China suffered devastating floods from 1931 to 1975 that were so severe that they are regarded as the most extreme floods in recorded history. The first one being the 1931 Yangtze Huai River floods. A dike breach along Lake Gaoyu on August 25, 1931, marked the end of the Yangtze Huai River floods that had affected major Chinese towns like Wuhan, Nanjing, and others from June to August 1931. Throughout the years 1928 to 1930, China had a severe drought. The next winter of 1930 was especially harsh, resulting in significant snow and ice buildup in mountainous regions. Early in 1931, during a period of intense spring rain, melting snow and ice flowed downstream and reached the Yangtze's middle channel. Normally, the area would suffer 3 high water periods in the spring, summer, and fall, but in the early part of 1931, there was only one continuous rainfall. By June, those living in low areas had already been forced to abandon their homes. Estimates of fatalities range widely. 150,000 individuals had died, according to a field study conducted soon after the flood, although this figure represented less than a fifth of all fatalities during the first 100 days of the flood. According to the official report, 140,000 drownings were discovered, and 2 million people perished in the flood either by drowning or through starvation. This was followed by the 1935 Yangtze flood. China had a decade of flooding, hunger, and social disorder before the Yangtze flood of 1935. With a death toll of 145,000 and millions of people displaced, it is considered one of the deadliest floods ever to be reported. Millions of survivors of the flood experienced suffering as a result of being displaced, hurt, and lost property, as well as food shortages and famine. With the 1935 floods following so soon from the 1931 floods, flood relief infrastructure, which included drainage reservoirs and floodwater channels, was soon overwhelmed. The provinces of Hubei, Hunan, Jiangxi, Anhui, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang, all of which are located in the middle to lower portions of the river, were most seriously affected by the Yangtze River flooding. Then came the 1938 Yellow River flood. This may not be the most natural flood, as it was created by the nationalist government in central China during the early stage of the Second Sino-Japanese War in an attempt to halt the rapid advance of Japanese forces. It has been called the largest act of environmental warfare in history, and an example of a scorched earth military strategy. Millions of people fled their homes as a result of the thousands of fatalities. The flooded districts were not only negatively affected by the high death toll but also for years to come. All of the crops were ruined, and the flooded countryside was largely abandoned. The ground was mostly useless for farming after the water rose because silt had covered a large portion of the soil. And lastly came the Banqiao Dam disaster of 1975 that occurred in Henan, China, when Typhoon Nina caused the Banqiao Dam and 61 other dams to fall in August of that year. With an estimated death toll varying between 26,000 and 240,000, the dam collapse caused one of the deadliest floods in history, which affected a total of 10.15 million people and submerged 30 cities and counties across an area of 12,000 square kilometers, or 3 million acres. A further consequence of the flood was the collapse of 5 million to 6.8 million homes. The dam failure took place when many people were preoccupied with the Cultural Revolution. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to stay updated on our next upload.